Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Opera 101 with Cleveland Opera Theater. Opera 101 is our series where we talk Mondays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays about all things opera and take you into this strange and wonderful world of ours. In light of it being the final Opera 101 of our month dedicated to Giuseppe Verdi, I figured it would only be appropriate to talk about Falstaff, which is Verdi's final opera, and also ties into the week theme of Verdi and Shakespeare. Falstaff was Verdi's final opera, and he was very old when he wrote it. He was about 80 years old when he started working on this. And after Otello, he had remarked that he wanted to do a comic opera. Verdi had only written one comedy before. It was called Un giorno di regno, and it did not take off and has never particularly been a part of the standard repertoire. It was relatively unsuccessful. It was early in his career. So he wanted to approach writing a comedy. He remarked that after having relentlessly massacred so many heroes and heroines, I have at last the right to laugh a little. Arrigo Boito was his librettist for this project, who was the same librettist who adapted Otello before, and they had a really great working relationship. And it was Boito's idea to adapt The Merry Wives of Windsor, which is the play that Falstaff is based on, the protagonist being the knight Sir John Falstaff. Boito also included scenes from Henry IV that also feature the same characters. One of Boito's reasons for picking this play was there hadn't really been an adaptation that took off internationally. Otto Nicolai did a reasonably well-known adaptation of The Merry Wives of Windsor, but it really was confined to German houses and didn't have much of an impact outside of Germany. That show is still done pretty often, but it has not come close to the effect that Falstaff has had. Falstaff premiered to a lot of praise. It was, Verdi's first opera in 9 years. The anticipation was huge, and it went over extremely well, but only for a very short time. Afterwards, it kind of fell out of regular performance, and people had more of a difficulty coming to Falstaff than they did to Verdi's previous operas, especially Otello, Aida, La Traviata, Rigoletto, and musically, it was viewed as a bit more difficult, and as a pretty big departure from Verdi's more well-known operas at the time. The music, a lot of people describe as disjointed. There is only one true aria, so to speak, of the aria of the character Ford, and it is very what we call through composed, where it is, as we've talked about in other videos, it isn't too much of a number opera where we start here, we end here, we have in between, this starts here and ends here. It's very, very, one thing leads into the other, and harmonically it is quite a bit more complex than a lot of Verdi's previous works, save perhaps Otello. Rhythmically, it is much more challenging, it is much more daring, and you don't necessarily get the sweeping sing-along type arie and choruses that you get in Traviata or Rigoletto. But what you get instead is absolutely fascinating. And musicians, musicologists, all sorts of people have gone to all extremes to analyze the music of Falstaff, and there are some really wonderful material written about it, and everyone kind of has their own different take. Is it something that's more symphonic form? If you look at it as a symphonic form opera, does that give some light? Was the influence of Wagner really sweeping into Verdi? That angle always causes a lot of controversy because Verdi and Wagner are known to have very, very strongly disliked one another, and there was definitely kind of a nationalistic rivalry of the German versus the Italian traditions in opera. To me, I don't think either of those are as strong an argument as the consistency of how well Verdi knew his texts. He knew his libretti so well and worked with his librettists to really master what was happening in the drama and paint that musically. And he does this to such an extreme with Falstaff that, yes, Verdi had never written a comedy since he was very, very, very young, and he completely changes his whole style of writing to accommodate that. When you listen to Falstaff, what you hear is absolutely Verdi. It is recognizable. It has the charm, the complexity, the detail that all of his famous previous operas do. But it's just a little different. It's more complex. It is starker. The changes are very sharp. It is disjointed at points, exactly like a Shakespeare comedy of manners is. And I think that is the most interesting thing to take away from the conversation about why is the music of Falstaff so different? Why was all this? Yes, granted, musicians, composers, when they reach the end of their lives, are interested in trying new things and pushing the tradition forward. Every composer did that. They always were striving for a new, to push themselves. But what's really remarkable about Falstaff is how much Verdi was able to capture the comedy, to capture the humor, the absurdity of this plot, of this text. And of course, as someone who had never written a respected comedy, it's going to be different. And I think what's interesting and amazing is just how different it is and how masterful it is. So I would encourage you all to take a listen to the opera, or check out a production of it on YouTube or any medium that you can find. It's really a really wonderful, wonderful piece. And when you listen to it with, I think, these things in mind, of how connected Verdi was to his texts and how masterful of a composer he is and how committed to the drama he is, I think you will all find a little more consistency between this piece and his earlier works than you may think. Thanks again for joining. If anyone has any questions or things that they would like to dive deep in further, please feel free to email us and get in contact with us. We're always happy to talk about more things. And we wish you a happy end to Verdi month. Figure we'd close with one of my favorite quotes of Giuseppe Verdi's, which is when someone asked him what the secret was to his success or where he got all his talent, he said, "Tre parole, lavoro, lavoro, lavoro," which means 3 words: work, work, work. Thanks as always for joining. Wishing you a wonderful month and a wonderful week. Please stay safe and join us again. Thank you.